Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Stage of Wisdom. So our first session for today is going to be the topic COVID, medical silver lining, cooperation, innovation, and transformative technology. This panel will be moderated by Howard Greenstein. And the speakers on stage, and I'm sorry if I mess up your name. English is my second language. I apologize. Angelo Stra... Cuetano.
Close enough.
Okay. Next is Michael Peretta. And then last but not least, Benjamin Taraft. Taraft. Sorry about that. Thank you, guys.
Good morning. Good morning, Stage of Wisdom. Let's make some noise. There's not that many. You got to make a lot of noise. All right. All right. Welcome. I'm Howard Greenstein. I'm really pleased to be with you fellows this morning and get a chance to talk about what is a weird way of saying it, a silver lining for COVID. Well, people say there's no upside to terrible things, but I'll tell you, I worked at a charity for families who lost rescue workers after 9/11, and we created a camp for the kids who lost their parents on 9/11, and no one wanted this terrible thing to happen. And those kids went on to make lifelong friendships, become teachers and social workers, and start a camp themselves to help the kids who lost their classmates in Sandy Hook Elementary School. So there are silver linings to terrible tragedies, and with that, let's bridge over to COVID. There's no happy upside to a pandemic that's killed 700,000 people in America and millions worldwide, but the silver lining is that we can see the power of innovation and technology where countries, companies, communities, and companies like yours have worked together for a common cause and really propelled the medical industry forward. And so I think we should kick this off with a question of, give us a quick intro, starting with you, Angelo, of your company, like a 1-minute Twitter version of what it is that you guys are doing.
Yeah, sure. Good morning, everyone. This is pretty exciting to see everybody again, and you know, it's pretty cool. I know it's very classic New Jersey September weather, or October weather now, but good to see everybody. And so I'm Angelo Stracotaneo, co-founder and CEO of Apprentice. We developed a intelligent manufacturing system for life sciences that was actually used during COVID vaccine production this last year. And so it's been quite a remarkable 15 months, but one that we're quite proud of to work with our customers because we took away so many different learnings over this last year, and we did it right here in New Jersey, so it's kind of cool.
Hey everybody, I'm Michael Peretta. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Docket Health Incorporated. We partner with state governments to expand consumer access to immunization records. Right now we're working with the state of New Jersey, the state of Utah, and the state of Minnesota. We're integrating now with 2 new states and a couple more in the pipeline. That's a little bit about me and Docket.
Hi, I'm Benjamin Treihoft. I'm the CEO of Helpful Engineering. We're a globally distributed community producing open innovation in healthcare and doing supply chain analysis and building capacity around the world to extend the values of what we can do here in the West in medicine in other parts of the world and build markets as we do it.
That's great. Can everybody hear everybody up here okay? Give me a thumbs up. All right, excellent. So the first question I have is how has COVID propelled your work forward? For Angelo, you began this work in 2014. Did COVID change your business trajectory?
Yeah, coming into COVID, we are a small company. We were only about 20 people. And post-COVID now, we're 6x the size of the team. Our revenue growth has gone up 12x. It's not public yet, but we've raised into 9 figures just in the last 15 months. And so it's beyond the growth, though, the most important thing is that the impact that we've had. We've worked directly with our customers as we've scaled this solution coming to market. But most importantly, though, this industry, life sciences, had to go so far above and beyond in the last 18 months to really help bring this vaccine to market. And it was challenging. It was really super hard. But the amount of innovation, the amount of tech that they use to be able to figure these things out, from my side, it's just unbelievable to see. And so the vaccine really helped push my team well beyond. I mean, we've been working 7 days a week for a year and a half now till 2 a.m. And it's really been quite a remarkable journey. But we're here now, and there's a lot of learnings from all of this. And I think, though, the most important piece is what's coming next, which is as we come out of COVID, there's just so much more opportunity to attack some much nastier diseases like cancer. So
That's really incredible. Michael, you guys started in 2016. Did what you were working on change because of the pandemic?
No, not at all. So we, just to clarify, Docket is not really a COVID app. We've been working pretty much consistently since 2017 with our public health partners on this project to expand consumer access to immunization records. People are about 30% more likely to comply with their immunization schedules if they have their immunization records handy. And we thought, really, this was a back-to-school app. The best way we can engage with the biggest audience was through immunization records and working with school districts to get this in the hands of people during back-to-school season, and also to improve immunization adherence. I had this awesome conversation with my in-laws, funny enough, a while back, where they go, immunization records, who really needs those? No one really needs their immunization records. And and we said, well, everyone needs immunization records. So so that was a different world back then. COVID created a market need for us to get this in the hands of as many people as possible. And I know in Jersey, we're just using Docket for COVID right now, but you'll see an app update if you have a Docket account. You'll see an app update sometime very soon that'll give you access to all of your immunization records with alerts when you or your children or your spouse are due for a given vaccine. So I think that's a little bit about how COVID propelled us a little forward.
So Ben, Helpful's community came about in 2020, weeks into the pandemic. What are a few things that you learned and accomplished, and how do you do that?
Well, it was really quite an extraordinary thing. It began right at the beginning of the pandemic and has become a kind of a global online running hackathon. It was really, we were very quick to have some wins. Early designs now have, that we're out just in the first 2 weeks that we only spent thousands on, have probably between the two that I can think of, the first maker mask with the correct material specification and a face shield design have been productized now over 80 million times by industry, not including the ones that were created and donated around the world, which would put that number well north of several hundred million. But longitudinally then, it was exciting because this having to dive in to what was needed to mitigate what is essentially a demand crush. It's led us to a supply chain exploration, and that led in turn to an engagement with the Department of Commerce and NIST, the Cyber Physical Systems team, to produce a supply chain interoperability specification. So this deep dive into the mechanisms, as bad as COVID is and has been and was, what is more significant is that the marketplace as a whole, and I'm not just talking about the stock market, the marketplace as a whole did not work. And that's really the threat here, is our inability globally to figure out how to cooperate to mitigate a massive threat, and in the context of health. And so that's been our work longitudinally since then. And we've just received some funding around taking those prototypes to next level.
That's great. My helicopter's arriving, so just give us a second, and then we'll continue. Ben, you talked about plans to move from COVID-related helpful engineering into other areas going forward. Tell me, what did COVID teach you about supply chain and other things that you guys are going to explore next with your online community? And maybe describe the size of this community as well.
Sure. When it was really fascinating. I mean, when it started out as 30 people, was 13,000 people in 3 weeks, and is now approaching, very near 20 and more in some cases. We're quite diffuse and interconnected the way many open source innovation communities are, and network together kind of behind the scenes, but they find their way around. They're very fluid. What we learned about this, especially around supply chain, it gets to this concept of interoperability, and we look at this within this construct of a cyber physical system today. Everything is a combination of information and matter, people, and how these things play together, and they're able to trust or validate. You have assurance, verification, validation, all right? It's what this guy is doing. That's essentially what his thing does. And if you put that in an open framework, we all know what it is. Oh, hey, you can trust it. That's where the concept that we're really moving towards, what we're developing is as we look at supply chain globally. And it doesn't matter the industry, because when you get down to it, you produce that in a way that is acceptable to all stakeholders, observes regulation needs, observes the needs of participants in a way that is acceptable to them, and things go. Then you can cooperate or collaborate when you need to.
Thank you. Michael, what lessons have you gotten from the last 18 months of ramping up into what Docket is doing now?
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's a great question. So, lessons learned over the pandemic. So, before the pandemic, we were sort of alone in our sandbox. There were maybe a handful of companies, actually really only 3 companies that I can think of, including us, that would work directly with state immunization registries to expand consumer access. And the pandemic really drew a lot more attention to this space. So when we had a lot of freedom to meet with all different types of stakeholders in the public sector and play around with designs and do whatever we really wanted, there almost overnight there was a lot more attention, many more companies that start pouring in, doing different things. And there was a lot more distractions, so it was harder to get the attention of the different states that we could work with. And then a lot of companies came to us with partnerships, and it was very tempting during the pandemic to engage with those companies and find other integrations and other partner projects. What we've learned is really we just had to stay the course and just keep doing what we're doing and focus in on our narrow use case. And that was a lesson we learned over time, but I think it served us well. So that was really just, if there's any one lesson, is just to focus on what we're doing and come back to the other fun things later.
So Angela, you started talking about how the pandemic has shown you the opportunity for so many more things. You want to talk about sort of how this is informing your growth and your next stage, now that you're getting some amazing funding and moving forward and growing the company?
Yeah, so to take a little step back, for those of you that don't know much about life science manufacturing or pharma manufacturing, this whole, how the whole vaccine came to market, take Moderna, one of our customers, for example, they found the mRNA sequence in about 4 days, whatever it was. It was super short. The rest of the time, generally speaking, was spent on manufacturing. And that was through clinical trial manufacturing, scale-up manufacturing, commercial manufacturing, and now global manufacturing, where the process for how quickly they took that molecule, scaled it up, and then scaled it out globally was quite ridiculous because, quite frankly, capacity for 8 billion human beings didn't exist in the network. There wasn't just bioreactors laying around waiting for 8 billion humans to make this vaccine. And so what's really interesting is that what we learned through this process is typically it's a waterfall. It goes like, I discover the drug, I submit my drug to the FDA, I go through my clinical trial process, and then I go manufacture. Instead, they had to do everything all at the same time, all in parallel, all on top of each other, all while we are all kind of figuring it out all at the same time. And what's really interesting is that coming out of this now, I think everyone's realized that, hey, wait a second, you actually can bring a drug to market safely. You can do it a lot faster. And so for our business, what we've been focusing on right now is all these what are called scale up and scale out learnings. Like how quickly can you go from benchtop scale bioreactor, making it for 10 people in a clinical trial to several million people, and how can you do it quickly? And how do you scale that up, and then how do you scale it out globally in a quick period of time? So it's pretty interesting how we've taken the direct learnings from this race and have applied it to the software now to help our customers bring this to market.
So if you could say that there was a defining moment in the last 18 months where you're like, this is what we need to do, this is the piece that we need to work on, what was that defining moment?
Yeah, so early this year, as the first commercial batches started to come to market, we decided to literally throw out all of our code and start again. Wow. In the beginning of 2021. And so we took what should have been probably a year plus worth of development effort, and we crammed it into almost about 45 days. And my team worked around the clock through the weekends, everything, to completely retool how our software worked, to take these learnings, apply those learnings, and then scale those learnings faster than any of us have done in an entire career.
That is quite a defining moment, and obviously needed. Michael, same question. What's your defining moment? What's your holy cow moment? To say that.
Yeah, that one's pretty easy for us. It was when we partnered with the state of New Jersey. I think our company's really small. We're a small but mighty shop of really just 2 core guys and a team of engineers. And we were really pretty deflated when New York, my home state, went with Excelsior Pass. But when we had the opportunity to work with New Jersey, that was huge for us. We saw that as a big win. New Jersey is the most densely populated state in the country, most urbanized state, one of the most states most impacted by the pandemic, next door to New York City, which requires proof of vaccination to do anything meaningful. That was a moment we said, okay, well, all hands on deck. We worked nonstop, early morning meetings, sleepless nights for 5 straight weeks to launch this thing on time. That to us was the defining moment where we for us.
Credit to New Jersey. How about you, Ben? What's the defining moment for you in the last?
There's been so many on this wild ride over the last 18, 20 months. I mean, being part of this, ending up running this. I came into it just to help like anybody else, but not sleeping for a year and a half really changes your perspective on things. I think probably the most eye-opening was how fast the first wins came for us and how significant the impact of these things have been, and knowing what they probably did for people, particularly in areas that didn't have access during those early times to PPE of any sort. And I think then longitudinally it's been understanding the power of what this kind of collective or collaborative innovation process can be when it really puts its groupthink to work to actually crunch a problem and solve it, and how effective that model is. And that's what we've been working at ever since, is how to reduce those barriers around those insights, that the power of that groupthink, and do it really fast, make it really efficient.
You guys have people all over the world contributing to the different projects that you're working on.
It is. I have the most unusual problem on the face of the earth. I have more incredible talent coming through the front door of our Slack, our organization, every single day. I mean, people you would not believe. I mean, I met the guy that pulled the Voyager together, who showed up to help. And that's just amazing old guy who was like, this is how you do assurance. This is how we put that satellite together. And that's just one example from one domain, and I have them. People from all domains came together to do this thing, and it's been magic. It really has.
So how will Helpful move forward in the most important way in the next, say, 6 months? What's your 6-month sprint on?
Well, we're COVID now, fortunately, there's a vaccine. It's out there. We're not out of the woods yet. There's still initiatives to be done to support healthcare around the world. And we're going to continue those as we expand to other medical innovation, other devices. But there's a lot of other stuff that one needs to do. Then you have to align it. And again, we look at things from an interoperable perspective, a lesson taken from software in some respects, the library model. But interoperability means more than that in the context of the world, in terms of Industry 4.0, and how do we take those concepts, those things that are normally enormous industry-driven things, and take them down to the individual maker level to provide that kind of assurance, whether it is large-scale manufacturing of a vaccine or that small bioreactor. We have one we can make for less than $1,000, by the way, at home, and provide the assurance around it, so that if you are a remote village out there in the middle of nowhere, you could license that and make it effectively and distribute it and know that it's safe.
So you're really distributing that around the world, which is amazing. Michael, you have 47 states to go, right? What are new areas of growth for Docket?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there's plenty of work for us to do in New Jersey. I think I mentioned New Jersey you'll have access to all of your vaccine series in the state. We're also working on a bunch of other projects to refer people to nearby immunization services when, say, for example, your child's MMR booster is due. We're, of course, working with new states. So we're implementing right now with a very small state out west, and then a top 5 state in terms of population right now. So We don't care if you're red state, blue state, big state, small state. We'll work with everybody. We're also, funny enough, we're doing a pilot with Delta Airlines. We're doing a pilot with the Utah Jazz, interestingly enough. So there's a lot of interesting opportunities ahead of us. But yeah, that's sort of a preview.
So, Angela, you have insight into new research and cures for new things based on the work that you're doing. What do you see coming in the next, pick a time frame, 12 months?
Yeah, so our number one strategic objective coming up here in 2022, we're already starting our 2022 planning,
right,
is to create a lasting impact from COVID to cancer. Because this pandemic will end. If it wasn't for Delta, I think we would have been done by now, or mostly done. But what's really interesting is that the new drugs coming to market are actually all focused around personalized medicine now. These are CAR T therapies, CRISPR therapies. Many of our customers, one of our customers actually had the first ever human successful trial of CRISPR, which it's a really, really big deal because these are no longer drugs will be treating disease. CRISPR will be used to cure disease with actual gene editing. And that manufacturing process for how they go about that is on a one-person scale. So if you actually need these therapies, if you actually need these treatments, what they'll do is they'll actually ship your blood from the hospital bed to the manufacturing facility. Some of them are actually here in New Jersey, huge like personalized medicine facilities out in Summit and Warren where I live. And what's really fascinating now is that this next wave of therapies will all be on an individual scale, using our own immune systems, using our own DNA, and that's how the future of drugs will change. Now, will that be done in the next 12 months? No, but we are very quickly racing forward with all this, and we at Apprentice, our goal is to have the software help them bring these drugs to market, manufacture it safely, and scale it to many millions of people.
I encourage everybody to look at some of the demos on the Apprentice site, look at some of the things that Docket and Helpful Engineering are doing. I thought I was looking at Star Trek when I looked at your website. It was pretty incredible, I have to say. So we have like a moment or two. Does anybody have a question from the audience? Yeah, speak up, Doc.
Howard Levine, I'm a practicing physician and also an entrepreneur involved in medical devices. And on one hand, I agree with you that this pandemic will end. I think there will be many more pandemics in this pandemic, and you're all doing is great. I'm a Docket user, so thank you. I was going to ask, and I know you're only in a couple of states, because the companies I'm involved with are all over, and I have different people, maybe with in-laws, immunization and our records are all very important going forward. When and how and what resources will you need to be in many more states for the different places where I go and where I travel? When and how is that going to happen?
Do you want to try to summarize the question?
Yeah, so the question is, I think, right, what's our plan to expand to more states? What resources do we need, and how can we make that happen to expand Docket? Is that the question?
That's right.
Yeah.
How do you differentiate yourself from these other companies? There's lots of people now have ways to watch, their...
And how do you differentiate?
Yeah. And how do we differentiate? So one is there are only 3 companies to this day that will connect consumers directly to immunization registries. So that's one differentiator. So the way immunization records in the U.S. work, it's different than all different types of health data. Immunizations are reported to the state level, generally speaking. Each state has different laws around that, but typically the state has the most comprehensive records for you. So if you get shots, different providers growing up, most likely the state will have the most comprehensive immunization record of an individual. But there are 60 plus immunization registries in the country. New York State has 2, for example, one for the city, one for the state. And they're all, they don't really talk to each other. When we started doing this work, we sort of co-developed this project with the CDC called the IZ Gateway to connect the different immunization registries. And Docket is the only consumer platform, and we're actually the biggest consumer of the IZ Gateway itself, which connects the different states. So that's one differentiator.
Interrupt you. We are about out of time. Quick thing, where can people find you online and find out more about it? Helpful.
Helpfulengineering.org. You can find us at.
Docket.
You can find us on Twitter at Docket Health App.
And Angela?
At apprentice.io.
I'm Howard Greenstein. I'm Howard GR on Twitter. Hit me up. Thank you so much, everybody. Jess, it's your show.